Esiet sveicināti podkāstā ar karavīru. Šodien pie mums ciemos ir ļoti interesants viesis, Kanādas bruņoto spēku pavēlniecības Latvijā komandieris Vins Kirsteins. Welcome to the podcast with the soldier.
Sveiki!
Sveiki! Viņš ir viens no kanādiešiem, kurš arī ļoti labi, es pat teiktu, māk runāt latviski, un es ceru, ka viņš šodien mums to arī parādīs un nodemonstrēs. But at first, maybe you could please introduce yourself briefly.
So absolutely. As you mentioned, Colonel Vince Kirstein, I'm the Canadian Task Force Commander here. I've been here as the Task Force Commander for 2 years, but this is my fourth out of the last 5 years in Latvia. So I started here as the Komanderis Vietnieks, Brigadas Ādažos, from 2019 until 2021. Went back to Ottawa for 1 year, and then have been back here ever since. And you've managed to catch me on my last couple of days in command. Unfortunately, I'm going to hand over on Friday. But I am a tanker by trade, so tank commander. Spent the early part of my career driving around in tanks, but for the last little bit, it's been more driving a desk than driving a tank. So.
I guess the tanks are more interesting to drive, not the table and computer.
It depends. We do some interesting things here, and we're going to talk about that today. But tanks are definitely more fun.
Oh. So you already said how long you have been in Latvia, but what you enjoyed most here in Latvia while you're here?
And this is now going to turn into what am I going to miss the most?
That was my last question.
But they're the same, right?
Yes,
what do I enjoy the most? Firstly, friends. Oh my God, we have so many friends here. It is going to be so hard to leave. And so that is going to be the hardest piece. But some of the other things we absolutely love here are the food. The food in Latvia is absolutely spectacular. I have not had a bad meal yet. And in 4 years, that's pretty good.
Yes, and hopefully there will be not in the last week.
No, I'm sure we'll be good. But so my youngest son will eat rosels. Breakfast, lunch, vakarinas, every day, and be happy about it. But my wife makes kringeris every year for my name day, and augstzupu, and so the food is absolutely spectacular. But nature. So everybody says Canada's got all this wonderful nature, and we do.
Yeah.
The problem is Canada's so big that it's hard to get to.
Yeah.
Whereas here, you can drive a little ways, and you're at some of the most beautiful beaches I've ever been to in the world. Oh. You go out east, and you're into the forests, out in Luksne, and out on the lake. We've been down to, I've been almost everywhere in Latvia. We were here for COVID. And so have traveled all over, and we are going to miss the nature and the appreciation that Latvia and Latvians have for the nature here. I mean, those are really the big four. The being together with friends for events like Ligua is memories we're going to keep forever, and we've pretty much promised that we're going to have to come back every year for Ligua, and then every 5 years at least for the Song and Dance Festival.
I'm glad to hear it. And what was some things that you were surprised here when you came here to Latvia?
So we had no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
But what we didn't expect was the beautiful architecture in Riga. I mean, we were absolutely blown away. You walk down Elizabetis and Alberta Jela, and some of the architecture there is just fantastic. But then how green it is in the summer, just amazing. And I've explained this to a whole bunch of my team as well, but the trees in the spring, in Canada, most of our forests are the same kind of tree. So it all just looks the same.
Yeah.
But here, you have so many different varieties of trees, and they all grow differently in the spring and are all different colors. And so one of my favorite things, I go down to Rundala Palace, but the drive there through the forests is absolutely unbelievable. So we were not expecting that at all. We also weren't expecting how dark and gray the winters were going to be. But we made the most of it, especially the winters where we had a lot of snow.
Yeah.
And so we would go out to Luksne and go sledding, ice fishing, and so tried to take part in some of the fun Latvian activities and make the best of it. So we enjoyed it.
I'm so glad to hear that you are enjoying Latvia and that you will definitely come back here.
Oh, definitely.
But for some more serious things, we also need to talk about on this podcast episode. And maybe you can explain in simple words, what is Task Force Latvia? You already mentioned that you are the commander of it. What is it?
So, and that's actually a question that challenges some of my people that work for me some days, because we have a lot of people that rotate every 6 months.
Yeah.
So we've got two main tasks. The first piece is we are the national command element for all the Canadians here. Mm-hmm. So we look after administration, discipline, finance, all of those national things that we have to look after. And so that is all one of the key responsibilities of my headquarters. But that's the easy part. The hard part is the second thing that we do is Canada's the framework nation.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we provide right now to the Brigade in Attaché a ready-to-go multinational battle group. And we're going to do the exact same thing with the brigade. Well, my team has to be the ones that organize building that and reaching out to allies and organizing who can provide what, who's coming with what, and making sure that the package we build and then hand over to NATO is what it needs to be and can do what it needs to do.
So coordination, as usual, as always, is the most hardest part of the job.
Absolutely.
The work.
And it's hard enough when you're working with just your own government.
Yeah.
But when you're working with, right now in the battle group, 11 different nations and soon to be 14 different nations inside of the brigade, that adds an extra dynamic. You have to understand what all those other nations are thinking as well.
And when was Task Force Latvia established and what led to its formation?
So we stood up in 2017 when we brought the battle group here. And the main reason was the 2 points I just listed was we needed to have a point of continuity.
Yeah.
So we didn't have everyone changing every 6 months and then having to relearn everything every 6 months. We wanted people to be here for 3, 4, 5 years to be able to understand the long-term plan and work towards that. And so that was the main reason it was stood up. It's grown a little bit over the years, and it's going to continue to grow a little bit in the next little bit as we start putting more and more people into Latvia on a more persistent basis.
I guess one of the hardest parts are these 6 months that you have to already change all the people and they are rotating away and new are coming in and you all the time need to explain and work with them just to get on track everything.
Absolutely, and that's a huge challenge, and that's why most of our senior people in my headquarters are posted here. But the thing I hate about it is saying goodbye to people.
Yeah,
I spend half of it seems like once a week I have to have a parade to say goodbye to folks, and that's the hardest part. And then like learning everyone what their strengths are, how they can be employed is a bit of a challenge some days. But
6 months it's too short term
way
for
too
it
short.
just to get to know the people.
No, absolutely.
And maybe you can share some insights from your experience as the commander of Task Force Latvia. You already gave some, but maybe something more.
I mean, I can talk about doing this all day. It has been. I'll let my soldiers talk about it, actually. The thing that the soldiers will tell me that they love the most about being here is working with the other nations. This is such a unique environment for soldiers from different countries to get to know one another, share language, share culture, share food, and just get to learn about other countries. And the Canadians that come here, and we've got guys do 3 or 4 rotations already, they can now travel across Europe and always have a place to stay. And so the friendships that have been built up over the last 7+ years are going to continue to grow. And so that is one of the most unique things about this, and something you just wouldn't expect. You'd expect soldiers to kind of group together by nation, and they do that to some degree. But the amount of integration that happens is really neat to watch, and not something that I really expected to happen. But now that I've seen it happen, I get it. It's fun to learn about new people.
It's interesting.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. just about collaboration, you already started to talk about it. But how does Task Force Latvia collaborate with National Armed Forces of Latvia and other NATO allies which are located here?
So I'll start with Latvia. It is an amazing relationship, and I mean, Canada and Latvia up until we came here didn't really have a lot of things going on. I mean, Air Baltic buys Canadian airplanes, but there wasn't a lot of known connections. So once we got here, we really started to understand, hey, there's a lot of similarities between our two countries, but the collaboration that happens isn't because of that. It's because we're working towards a common purpose. And we understand how Latvia feels threatened, and we're here to support that. And so we're both working towards the same goal. And it's neat to see, and it doesn't happen everywhere, but it's all the way down through governments, from our prime ministers, down through our ministries of defense, and definitely down to the armed forces level. And I work very, very closely with NBS-Stabs. I am in the headquarters at least twice a week, lots of times more often, to make sure that there's no misunderstandings. We both know exactly what we're doing, when we're doing it, why we're doing it, so that when politicians ask, hey, what's going on here? No doubt in anybody's mind, this is the plan, this is where we're at in the plan, and this is what's happening next. And so I think that's critical to our success here. There's no secrets between us. And that is important for that relationship, and it helps build that collaboration.
Of course. And how about other NATO allies which are located here?
And so very similar. So Canada really takes the framework nation seriously. We need support to be able to make this as good as possible. And so I work back and forth with national capitals, but I work with each nation has a senior national representative, so the leader of their group. So I'm the Canadian SNR, but to be able to work with those NATO allies and make sure that we understand what's going on. It was even more of a challenge at the start when the battle group stood up. Nations would change their contributions every rotation. And so you weren't just learning new people, you were learning new things. What did they bring this time? And so we worked with the nations to go, okay, let's clarify this, square it away, built up that communication network, and now it's been in place for probably about 5 years. And it makes it really easy to do. And we've all become friends as well. So I'm bouncing around from capitals to capitals. They're coming here. And so it works really, really well for us. And mostly because we're very open, very honest about what we're doing.
Of course, there are allies, Canadians, Latvians, also governments, but we are talking about armed forces. What about the another side, local community? How does Task Force Latvia engage with the local communities here in Latvia?
And so it depends is the right answer. So we have traveled around showing NATO presence, being out there, being seen, which is part of our deterrence, making sure that Russia knows that we're here, we're on the ground here. But also the name of our mission is called Reassurance. It's the Canadian mission name, Operation Reassurance. It also lets Latvians know, hey, we're here. So when we're out in Daugavpils or Resigne or Luxne, so, there's Canadians here. But it's not just that, it's more than that. We also do a whole bunch of community outreach, so supporting community help events, working in kitchens for the less fortunate, doing some of those pieces. We were obviously out for big cleanup day, and so all of those pieces, working with the communities. We obviously have a very close relationship with Adige because we've dropped a lot of soldiers in there, and they spend a lot of time. But also with all the other communities around. And where we're going to be moving to as well as we grow the footprint is to make sure that people know we're here. We want to work together. And so I meet with the mayor of Adige to talk about, hey, what's the next steps so that there's no surprises on that side either when we bring in more troops and there's more support required. And so we're always out and about and we get to see the country as well. And that's a big deal for our soldiers is they get to see the country they're tasked to defend if they need to. And it builds up that confidence that we're here as well.
Yeah, of course. And as you said, when the soldiers are going around Latvia, they are getting to know the country, so they know what they are protecting and why they are here.
Absolutely.
That mindset gets inside them.
Well, and they get to see the beauty of the country that I've got to see a lot more often. And so it doesn't do any of us any good if they just sit in the camp in Adige and wait. It's actually get out, see the ground, see the people, meet the people, where you really build up that relationship.
And maybe there are some of these projects that or events that you are particularly proud of, or something memorable happened there.
They're all really, really memorable. And so the one I will highlight actually the most is our military police back in Canada work with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. And so when the military police got here, they have worked with and I can't remember the name of it specifically, but it's a support hospital, not a hospital, but for blind people.
And something like.
I honestly can't remember.
Okay.
But what we've used is, so we had a soldier who was killed in Afghanistan, and they created a fund in his name that we can leverage some of the money to provide support to organizations. It's called the Boomer Fund. And so we've used a lot of that money to buy equipment, books, things that are required to support that school. And so that's something that's kind of been really notable for me.
And what are some of the key challenges Task Force Latvia must overcome?
Ooh, we have lots, and I think the key to this is we're growing really fast, and I can only build so fast. And so right now, one of the big challenges we have is infrastructure, like actual barracks, mess halls, gyms, where I'm going to put all of the people and where they're going to train. And so that's our biggest challenge that we're working on right now. And Canada's put in some huge investments into Latvia in terms of building barracks in Adige, but we're also building up the base in Skulte, Seri.
Yeah.
And so all of that is our biggest challenge right now, is to get that done as good as possible so we can get the team here and then figure out how we're going to manage that over the long term.
You already mentioned that you need also gyms. Soldiers are going a lot to the gym.
Absolutely. And so Adige, the gym in Adige,
one of the favorite places, yes.
It's one of the most beautiful gyms I've ever been in.
Oh.
And so always, and I mean, soldiers, it's part of our job is to stay fit so that you can be prepared to fight and operate. Yeah. But yes, soldiers spend a lot of time in the gym as much as they can to keep themselves fit, stay trained, but it also builds some team cohesion when you're playing some team sports. Get some good friendly soccer matches out, particularly when you look at some of the nations we have inside of the EFP battle group and soon to be the brigade. Spain and Italy take football very, very seriously. I'm going to hear about that from the Spanish senior national representative, actually, because we call it soccer in Canada, but that is... It's not something they say in Spain. So
no, football, it's here in Europe. Yep. How Task Force Latvia and Canadian Armed Forces adapt to geopolitical situation in Baltic states and also to the everyday life in Latvia, in like military terms?
No, absolutely. And so two very different questions. So the first one, geopolitical, there's a reason we're growing to a brigade. The threat is there, and we want to make sure that we're ready if we need to be. And so for Canada, that's a bit of a challenge because of the Atlantic Ocean. And so to be able to force project takes us time. And that's why we're bringing most of the brigade in, and it's going to stay here. So that's a reflection of our adaptation to the geopolitical situation and our continued growth and continued training. In terms of the day-to-day military stuff, I mean, it's amazing right now. As a former deputy commander of the brigade, I'll tell you, because right now the EFP battle group is part of the mechanized infantry brigade in Adige. And so that collaboration, working back and forth with the Latvian brigade, really ties us to the community. So we get to understand working with Latvians in a day-to-day context in a work relationship. But as people come here and stay longer, we get to know people outside of work as well. And that builds up those much stronger relationships over time.
Well, it could be said that every day could be a little bit challenging for our allies because of the everyday life, Latvian language, traditions, different food, holidays, what you need to take into account. How you personally and your colleagues have adapted to the life in Latvia?
Well, it's different for all of us. And so some of the people that work in my headquarters, with the exception of when they're out buying groceries and stuff, don't have a lot of interactions when on day to day. I mean, we travel around the country and see stuff. But I'm extremely fortunate in that I am working with Joint Headquarters and other organizations on a daily basis. And so I count myself extremely fortunate to have been able to work so closely with all of the folks across all of the brigades and across the entire NBS-Stabs. So build up my understanding of how things work here, how we do things. So soldiers, day to day, like to do fun things.
Of course.
And Latvia is full of fun things. And the soldiers have the opportunity to spend weekends in Riga. And so you come in, and the Riga City Festival is coming up, for example. And so there will be Canadian soldiers all over the place. But there's always something going on. And every town has something going on. And so sometimes we support that with a community outreach event, but then we actually get to stay and participate in it. And so that makes it pretty awesome.
I'm glad to hear it. And kā ar latviešu valodu?
So, es runāju mazliet latviešu valodu. Tas atkarīgs no tēmā, vai mans ir valodas vai ne. Bet pēc 4 gadi šeit ir svarīgi, bet pirmoreiz šeit es biju komandieris vietnieks brigādās Ādažos, un kāds bija sanāksmē, 30 latvietas un es, un visiem jārunā angļu valodā. Mans nepatīk. Un mans priekšnieks man teica, ka you will be more useful if you speak Latvian. Bet tas bija grūti, bet bija vislabākais skolotāja pasaulē un daudz motivācijā. Bet pirmoreiz šeit es pēc 6 mēnesī bija problēmas uz parādā. Un mans priekšnieks man teica, kas tas ir? Es teicu, es nezinu, mans nav atbildīgs. Bet es neesmu atbildīgs, but me not responsible bija the first example.
Yeah.
Es varu teikt, ko es gribu, bet dažreiz mans nav visvalds. So, ir grūti, bet es zinu, ir svarīgi arī. Šeit es varu darīt, ko man jādarīt Rīmī un visur, bet arī es varu strādāt kopā ar visiem šeit.
That motivation you said, I will speak in English, so it's maybe a little bit better, but what you said, that this motivation that not a whole group must just to adjust to you as only one person, just to work together, but you as individual, you are coming here, you are getting interest into this language, and you want to work with them. That's why you are learning Latvian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And your Latvian is really, really great.
Paldies!
It was hard to learn all these eshes and everything.
Mana skolotāja katru reizi, ka nes bija ideāli, stop. Nākamreiz. So, tas bija 3-4 nedēļas. Mēs bijām tikai every letter, every sound. But tāpēc latviešu valodā katru, I can't remember the word for letter. Every letter says its sound every time. So if you hear a word, you can punch it into Google Translate and go, skaidrs. And so that was very useful. And so es runāju franču valodā arī. Bet franču valodā ir daudz vārdus. Kas tas ir? There's 15 letters and only 3 sounds. And so it's very different in that respect. But so many grammar rules.
Even the Latvians can't all the time remember all these grammatical rules.
Nope.
That's our language.
And so I've actually spoken with quite a few Latvians about this, and I think that is one of the reasons that Latvians do a really good job at learning other languages.
Maybe.
Because when I learned English in Canada, and I didn't learn French until I joined the Army, we just assume, you'll learn to figure it out because everybody around you is going to speak English. And so we don't teach the grammar rules very well. Mm-hmm. And so we don't get that base. And so it wasn't until I learned French where I actually had to learn the grammar rules that I realized, oh, that's why we do it like that. And so that helped me a lot coming here. Yeah. And my language teacher did a great job of explaining all of it.
I'm glad to hear it because your Latvian is really, really great. You can give my compliments to your language teacher.
Paldies, Inta.
Maybe let's talk about a little bit about future. Sure, it's sad that you're going away. I'm really sad about that. But what are the future plans for Task Force Latvia? They are staying here. What will happen next? As much as you can reveal.
No, absolutely. But so, yes, we're absolutely staying here is the answer to question number one. We're going to continue the same support we're providing. So, and it gets bigger now that we're growing to a brigade. And so we're doing all of the work with even more sending nations, with more people, to be able to make sure that everything goes as smooth as possible, because it's not going to go perfectly. And it's going to take us time to get better at figuring out who's going to live where and who's going to work in which office. But over time, we're going to build that up. And then we're going to figure out how long we're going to be here, because the threat's not going away. Mm-hmm. And so Canada's going to be here until we don't need to be here. And I don't know how long that's going to be. And so we will continue to work towards that as much as we can.
I'm glad to hear that. And what lessons have you learned from your time with Task Force Latvia and that you believe are important for future leaders and for yourself?
So be honest, be open, and communicate. If you don't explain what you're doing and why you're doing it, then you generate confusion. And that has been the biggest thing for us here. It has been always very, very open. This is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. And that makes it clear for our soldiers, but it makes it clear for the allies as well. Okay, this makes sense. And it makes it more easy to work with this, I think, where we work together. Hey, we're going to do this. Does this work for you? If not, how can we make this work better for you? And so I have always been a very collaborative leader, but it really was highlighted the importance of it here for me. And I think a lot of our soldiers are learning that as well, is every nation does things differently. And you can't just say, we're doing it my way. You've got to figure out, and we have the opportunity to learn from one another, to go, okay, why do you do it like that?
Yeah.
And so that helps us a lot, I think.
I think that's the most greatest thing, that you know your objective, you know that mission, and you know why. Because without that, there is no motivation to do that.
Absolutely.
Also, recently, you experienced a really great event, very important event. You received the Order of Viesturs. For our watchers, Ordeņa, Viestur ordens. Yeah. Komandieris saņēma šo te apbalvojumu par speciāliem nopelniem un ieguldījumu Latvijas valstī, par nozīmīgu savu personīgo ieguldījumu Latvijas un Kanādas sadarbības stiprināšanā tieši militārajā jomā, un arī spēcinot mūsu aizsardzības spējas un Latvijas drošību. This is a really, really great event, and also that you have been acknowledged from our Latvian state like this. What is your feelings right now when you have received this Order of Viesturs?
Oh, tas bija liels pagodinājums. Un pēdējoreiz es klausīties, es biju Rīgas pils, un bija fantastiski. Bet nebija tikai es. Es esmu komandieris, un tas ir saņemt, kāpēc es saņemt Viestura ordres, bet komandieris bez komanda nav komandieris. Un mēs strādājam visi kopā. Un nav tikai kanadietis, visiem šeit. Mēs strādājam visi kopā. Es biju atbildīgs ar visu, bet tas bija liels pagotnājums.
Es tiešām priecājos, ka jūs esat tā novērtēts no latviešu puses. Jo jūsu ieguldījums tiešām un sadarbība ir fantastiski bijis līdz šim. We already talked that what things you like to hear most and what you will miss when you will be back in Canada, but maybe there is something else what pops in your mind right now. What is there something that you will miss so greatly from Latvia?
So this one's probably going to surprise you. I'm going to miss driving here.
Driving? Okay. This is really a surprise.
So Latvians drive aggressively, but politely aggressively. Okay. So if I need to change lanes in Canada, if I'm in Toronto in traffic, and I put my light on to go to the left, it will take me 10 minutes. Whereas here, you put your light on, the first person to let you in, seconds sometimes. And then you say thank you with your four ways, and you carry on. Doesn't happen. I tried it when I went back for the year between the two deployments here. You could just get used to it. And so someone would let me in, and I turn the four ways on, and people would be like, what's that guy doing? But I absolutely love driving here. It's the drivers are polite. Everybody follows the rules for the most part. You understand the crosswalks and how that works. And so it's fantastic. And my kids are almost old enough to learn to drive. And I was really hoping we'd get to stay one more year so that my eldest could at least learn to drive here because it's easier than in Canada. Yeah. I'm not going to miss the roads, though. I live right down in Old Riga, and the cobblestones, I've had to replace my shocks a couple of times in the van. So
well, yeah, but it's history. It's history.
Absolutely.
Those stones.
And it keeps the speed down too. So.
Yes, also. But I hope that you will not get into accident in Canada. Because you have learned here how to drive.
Absolutely.
Politely, aggressively, as you said. So. It was a really interesting talk. I'm really glad and I'm really grateful that you came here. But I want to offer you one last opportunity. Maybe is there something what you want to say to our watchers and listeners? A little bit open mic for you.
Oh, wow. Pirmais, paldies. Tas bija 4 fantastiski forši gadi. Un būs grūti. Bet es ceru, ka mēs aizbraucam šeit pēc tam. But it's going to be hard to leave. I'm going to miss all of the people. I'm going to miss being here. But I have made a lot of promises saying that we are going to be back every year for Ligua. And I wouldn't miss it for the world. So, we felt like family here. And I got to do more than just work with people. I got to live with them. I got to meet their families. And I'm going to miss all of it.
Thank you for this conversation. And, paldies jums. Un es ceru, ka jūs arī skatītāji, klausītāji uzzinājāt kaut ko jaunu. Tā skaitā par Kanādas bruņoto spēku pavēlniecību Latvijā. Iepazināt šo foršo cilvēku arī caur šo kameras pusi. Un es tiešām ceru, ka mēs jūs redzēsim vēl kādreiz gan pie mums, gan arī bruņotajos spēkos. Un vienkārši kaut kur tiksimies kādos līgos svētkos.
Paldies, Marta.
Paldies. Atā.
Atā.